All right. I call the meeting to order. It is February 24th, 2015. So welcome everybody to the Hamlet District Informational Meeting. I call the meeting to order at 7:02. If everybody would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, again, I want to thank everybody for coming. Great turnout. Paul and Vic are going to be presenting the Hamlet presentation, Hamlet District presentation. Again, I'd like to use the sign-up sheet as a guide for our questions. So initially, if you want to ask questions, please sign up because that's how I'm going to follow the questions. Number one, number two, number three. I'll go through the list again, and then towards the end, I'll open it up for general questions. The questions, when we get to that piece, I'll recognize the questionnaire, or the question person. So I'll just point and say, go ahead, ask your question, etc. So we try to keep a little control here, and not everybody's speaking at once. So try to be courteous. Ask your question, maybe why you ask your question and why it affects you. Because I think Paul and Vic want to use this also as an information gathering. They want to share the logic of why they come up with with their presentation here. So with that, I'll turn it over to Paul Golding, the chairman of the Zoning Review Committee.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. I am really extraordinarily pleased to see this many faces. You've ruined a line later in the speech, but that's fine. You all have copies, I hope, of our proposal, and some of you probably read it already on the town's website and had a chance to think about it. Tonight, we want to discuss it. Let me stress that. This is a proposal. Your input is very welcome and needed. We want to ensure that this proposal meets the desires and needs of as many residents of our town as possible. That's my motto for tonight. We're going to spend some time going over the proposal and why we wrote it the way we did. I'll show you some pictures and address some concerns that were already raised 2 weeks ago. But most of the time tonight will be for your questions. Several years ago, when the first of 3 revision committees was working on the comprehensive plan, we held a meeting up at the Potter Hill Fire Station. I don't know if many of you, I think, were there. And my line here was, more residents came to that meeting than I've ever seen before or since in one place. But the one word that almost everyone used to describe their vision of Princetown is that, rural. People wanted the town to stay pretty much the way it was. They didn't want big box stores or tracts of identical houses. There was one change, however, that many people did favor. They wanted to see some kind of a town center developed. For example, a grocery store with some cafes, retail stores, maybe a bank. When I heard the phrase town center or hamlet, I thought of those sweet little New England villages. A place where people could shop and eat, maybe go to a doctor or a drugstore, or just see each other from time to time and talk. That idea, echoed by the folks who responded to the committee's later survey, became a section of the comprehensive plan. And this is the first page of the handout, so you don't have to try to read it. The screen. Because of the threat of the type of development near the border of Princetown and Rotterdam that would conflict with the goals of our Hamlet district, The town board passed a moratorium on commercial projects requiring special use permits and asked the zoning review committee to start our work with that section. And so we did. We met twice a month throughout the whole last year, and the minutes of those meetings are all on the town's website, so you can see for yourself how we got from there to here. The purpose of the Hamlet District is summarized on page 2 of your handout. To create a traditional Hamlet setting where greater flexibility in development design is permitted in order to encourage and provide for a mix of retail businesses, social gathering places, higher density residential uses on a small to medium scale, and service establishments that serve and enhance the adjacent residential and rural populations of our town. So you can see the goal here is not to restrict, but to open possibilities for development that are currently not allowed in a purely commercial district. For example, multi-family housing like condos, townhouses, and apartments. Mixed uses, such as stores on the first floor with apartments above. Senior citizen housing. The goal is to create an area that provides much-needed services to the community. It's to create a path forward for the town without destroying our basically rural character. So, next question is exactly where should these new Hamlet zones be? And these maps are also, I hope, in your handout. This is the first one. It's along Route 7, basically, from the town border on the right side up there. You can see town halls up near the corner. And the interstate is that curving path through here. So it runs from the border all the way down to the overpass here. And this is the second one, so we're on Route 20. All of our existing zoning laws are set up the same way. They start by listing the uses that are allowed in each zone and then those that are allowed but require special use permit. The new Hamlet zone works the same way. All these uses are listed at the beginning of your handouts. But what I'd like to do instead here, for the sake of clarity, is to compare the new Hamlet zone with the commercial zones that they would replace. So, what we have here are uses that are allowed in the Hamlet. The Hamlet column is on the right, and A stands for allowed, and S stands for requires a special use permit. So you can see is that in the first 3 cases, they were allowed in commercial, but in the latter 4 cases, restaurants, coffee shops, clinics, etc., those require a special use permit, but under the proposal that we have, they're fine. And these are more uses that are allowed in the Hamlet, but they're not even mentioned in the zoning concerning commercial, but they would be flat out allowed in the Hamlet district. This one shows a similarity of uses needing a special use permit in both. The 2 tables are identical except for office building at the bottom, which currently is allowed in the commercial without a special use permit. But all the others, motor vehicle repair shop, bars, taverns, retail establishments that sell gas and stewards, all that is allowed with a special use permit right now in the commercial. And it would still be allowed with a special use permit in the Hamlet. But this one is the biggest difference. In the Hamlet, with a special use permit, you can have housing, residential, mixed use, apartment over retail, townhouses, condominiums, senior housing, assisted living. None of that is permitted right now in the commercial district. There's no housing. And the whole point of this is to be able to have housing in the same place that you have businesses in a small area so that you can attract businesses because there will be housing. And then finally, this last comparison shows certain undesirable uses, as we call them, that are not allowed in the Hamlet district. Like the big box stores, which by the way, are permitted right now in the commercial district. because there's no size limit in our current zoning. So you can have retail in the commercial district, and since there's no size limit, you could have a big box store. These are things that we basically thought would detract from this new zoning or make it ineffective in achieving its goals. Now, as with all the other existing zones in Princetown, we had to specify a lot of things. Sizes and setbacks, sizes of lots, setbacks. This is all in your handout if you want to read it in detail. I'm not going to go over it in any detail because there's a lot of other things, equally technical issues that we had to deal with. Things like lot coverage, lot access, streets and driveways, off-street parking and loading, landscaping and signage. It's all in the handouts. You can read them all in the proposal we handed out or on the town website. But I do want to mention just a few. Building and site requirements, number of buildings, more than one building shall be allowed on a single lot where appropriate. Height limits. No building shall exceed 35 feet in height. That's the same as it is in the town as a whole right now. But we added, except for mixed-use, residential, and multifamily, in which case the maximum height is 42 feet or 3 stories. And then size limits, the biggie for me. No single occupant or tenant within a building shall exceed a total floor area of 35,000 square feet, and no single building shall exceed 50,000 square feet. And with that size limit, you could have a medium-sized grocery store, oh please. But, and once again, no big box stores. And finally, this, design standards. The intent of these standards is to ensure that the Princetown Hamlet districts maintain a unique and pleasing community identity by requiring new development to be architecturally sympathetic to rural neighborhood design. Buildings should creatively reflect traditional elements of the rural character of the town, and while diversity is encouraged, buildings should be in harmony with the proportions, decorative design elements, and street relationships of nearby buildings, whenever possible. Architecture shall be custom designed and present a rural country theme. Corporate, chain-type architectural standards, color schemes, and branding shall be minimized. That's right there. That's minimized as opposed to maximized. And finally, we also drafted a proposal for the town's gateway. It's called a gateway overlay, which is a zoning term meaning that the rules apply in addition to the rules for any district where it's located. It is, however, second in priority to the already existing water district overlay. And here's what it says. Gateways are the major entry points from surrounding municipalities and roads in Princetown. The gateway into a community can be considered its front door. It provides the introduction to a community. The physical gateway areas are comprised of the roads and surrounding properties that a motorist or pedestrian encounters when first entering the town. These areas create a sense of arrival and connection to the town and establish an image and initial impression of the community. Here's our suggested map. It's really quite a small area. It's the property is basically along Route 7, just as you enter Princetown. And this is a list of uses that would be prohibited in the gateway. And I want to remind you, well, bars and taverns and fast food restaurants are just fine in the other areas of the Hamlet district. We felt the town's image would be strengthened if they weren't the very first establishments that you saw. So, this is the kind of place we're talking about. It can't happen overnight or in 1 year, maybe even 5 years. But if we don't have a vision of what we want, then we won't get it. Personally, I want to live here for the rest of my life. I don't want to see property values in this town go down, however, because we sat back and let others profit at our expense. I've said it before, both in print and here a month ago. Rotterdam can go ahead and call itself a nice place to live. I'd like Princetown to be an even nicer place to live. That's my remarks. And I'd be happy to take questions at this point.
Yeah, can I start on the phone?
Absolutely.
Couple questions for you. We're talking
And I have other members of the committee who are with me.
pardon?
And I'm not going to pretend to speak for the entire committee other than.
Well, we're talking about
Go
a
ahead.
town center.
Yes, sir.
That's in the comprehensive plan.
Yes, it is.
Where was that gonna take place? I mean,
It was in the comprehensive
you
plan.
know, I know where it's in. Where would that be in our area? There's only one piece of property for sale on this road, and that's next to the state police barracks. That's number one. Number two, sidewalks, bike paths, pavilion, park, goes with a Hamlet district.
Mhm.
How are you gonna finance this?
Lou, if you don't start somewhere.
Well, no, that wasn't the question.
We
The
don't-
question is, how do you pay for this? Are we gonna ask the residents to have a town tax to support this? Are we gonna ask the businesses to have to support this? How are we gonna pay for this? Sidewalks? Who's gonna pay for all of this? This is a very, very costly thing
Yeah.
that you're asking the town to take on. We don't even have an
I'm not-
idea what the costs are gonna
I
be.
think you misunderstand. We're not planning on going out with our shovels and starting to dig or build anything. But if you don't allow a person to develop a piece of land with multiple housing, if you don't get a bunch of people to live in an area where they can also shop, then you're not gonna have anything. Because
Well,
if you
the
wanna
cost-
be.
The problem is, we're asking the town board to approve something,
To
and we
approve.
don't know what the cost is.
We're asking him to change the zoning, to allow, and that's all, we're not asking the town board to build anything. We're asking the town board to do, as it said in the comprehensive plan, create an area where you can have housing and businesses. Because if you want to get, and I desperately want to get a grocery store here, that's what I'm in it for, frankly. But if you want to get a grocery store here, you better have enough housing density in that general area to make it attractive to the people who own the grocery stores.
Well, first off, you couldn't have a grocery store because we don't have sewers in this town, so it had to be out of it.
It says at the beginning, it says back
So,
on page
I've
one.
looked into that, and I've called grocery
Okay.
chains and asked them if they were interested in this property next door, and they're not because of the sewer. They need sewers, and we don't have sewers here, so that'd be out of the question right now, unless sewers come up. But that's my question, and I have to say it again, I don't understand how we can support this at this time, how you can pay for something this large when you're asking the town board to approve this change, and we have no idea what the costs are gonna be down the road, none whatsoever. And to maintain a town center, we have no idea what the costs are. I don't know. Maybe Mike, you're in favor of this, Joe's in favor, if they wrote this letter out, they're in favor. Did you get any cost estimates or anything like that? Maybe you could tell the residents how you plan to pay for this.
So, I think this information meeting is actually for the residents. I'll gladly respond to your questions, because my first example is gonna be like a house or any business, it's really upon the owner to build the house and the infrastructure on that property. But basically, I'd really like to turn this over to the residents. It's up to the residents, in my opinion, to let them ask the questions.
Okay, let them ask it. I know that, that's my question, how it's gonna be financed.
Well,
I think that's a legitimate question for everybody to understand, and they should keep that in the back of their mind.
Okay, and I think that the answer to that is, as I said, that we're not asking the town board or the town to foot any bills right now. This is a zoning change. Without that zoning change, no one can decide that in this area they can put in senior housing. No one can decide they can put in a condominium complex here or on Route 20, which, by the way, is something that someone happens to be interested in doing. And no one can do that because it's a commercial area, and in a commercial area you can't do that. So, I mean, I've addressed this, and our committee has addressed this with Donald Z., who's the attorney for Carver Airway. They understand that unless there is a change, just a change in the zoning, then it's not possible to take another step forward with a project they want to do. That's as simple as that. It doesn't have a price tag attached to it at this point, or in the future. It has to evolve. It has to start somewhere. If you don't make any changes at all, then you're going to get anything at all. That's the answer.
Well, thank you for your presentation.
Dave Geisinger. You want to stand up so everybody can hear you, Dave? That'd be
Okay,
great.
I don't have a question at this point in time. I signed to just register that I was here.
Okay.
That's all, thank you.
Sandra
Put up your
Geisinger?
name bars again, please.
I'm sorry?
Can you put up your name bars?
Oh, yeah, sure. Sorry.
Thank you.
Sandra,
Well,
if you can stand up so we can all hear you.
my question is actually motivated by the previous meeting, which was where someone brought up the speed limit of 55 miles an hour. So my question is, while I love the idea of a Hamlet and I do like a grocery store, is there a concern about the speed limit of 55 miles per hour along those two routes?
There would be for me personally, but I'll take Vic's answer on that one. It's my opinion.
Absolutely, and I think that in order, yeah, I agree, 55 miles an hour isn't conducive to a Hamlet environment, but there is no Hamlet today, so you gotta get the horse in front of the cart, in my opinion. If we pass the zoning, there's gonna be a long list of things to address, and that would be one of them. And, you know, the things Lou's bringing up potentially as well. By the way, there's a grocery store in Duanesburg. I don't think they have sewers out there, do they?
It's in,
Essex?
That's-
I don't think they have sewers.
I did call different chains and they weren't interested in the area.
Vern Vosberg?
Yes, what does a gateway entry area consist of?
Basically, it's just the property, it's a restriction on the properties that are immediately adjacent to the entrance on Route 7. That's all we made it to me. It would be nice if we had a better sign. I don't think we probably should put on the sign that it's.
You take somebody's property and just do something with
Yeah,
it?
something. You know, a monument on whatever. But what all we are proposing is just a limitation on the very first entities that you come upon when you enter the town. Right there is a border, what used to be no cars, small engine repair across the street. The lot which is right next to the town hall.
Mike Hayden.
I'm good.
I don't know where you are.
Stand up.
Okay. Mert Van Wee?
And the main question I got is the paper that you made out, that there's undesirables along here, that's commercial. Who was the undesirables?
I have to look at that.
You wrote it.
I understand, sir.
On Route 7 in the town of Rotterdam and Princetown, London.
Yeah?
I'd have to read it again.
And everything, just like our shop, that thing up there, the road, that was put there in 1950. Now all of a sudden, you got, everything you do, you got a special use permit. But you missed something. To sell cars, to work on the cars, to do this. You missed one. You should have a special use permit so we can go potty once in a while.
Thank you, sir.
And another thing, I don't see anything on how much these special use permits are.
It's in our, well, so that's a completely different subject. We're going to try to stay on subject, which is the Hamlet district.
But one answer to that is that most of the differences between, we're just talking about changing zoning in two commercial zones from commercial to Hamlet. And most of the changes that we're making take off the special use permit. They're taken off from a number of the uses that I showed you before.
It doesn't for us, it has special use permits where we don't have them now.
Yeah, but we, if you
No,
talk about going, if you talk about.
You would be grandfathered, you're not gonna have to get a special.
When I go to sell my lot to you tomorrow, and pick it up on that thing, and you can't, you have a special use to be a mechanic shop, and you can't sell cars, what's my property worth now?
Your question is, if you sold your business as is,
If I sold my lot, somebody else wanted to go in there, and they can't sell cars or do none of the stuff that I do now.
in that case, they would need a special use permit.
And that
They
makes
can't
the
get
property,
one.
But you do not.
Okay, it's going to have one meeting, folks.
that makes the property a lot less money.
Okay,
Oh, yeah, that
Well,
doesn't matter, right?
well, actually, so I have a piece to address that.
sure.
You want to get in, want me to do that, but to, or you want to keep going?
Yeah,
That's what?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, because a lot of the things that came up 2 weeks ago when you all thought I was gonna make a presentation, and I didn't, were about that very question, which is basically a question of grandfathered uses. And Vic, being the head of the zoning appeals board, knows a lot more about that than I do.
So I'm Vic Benson, I'm serving on the board with Paul, the zoning review committee. I'm also your chair for the zoning board of appeals. And Paul asked me to address the question, so what happens to residents or business owners that are inside of what could become the Hamlet district? So, I just have a few words to address that, maybe answer some of the questions ahead of time. So in town,
Excuse me, sir.
So in town, as a result of our current zoning, which has been around for some time now, we have lots or parcels, we have structures, buildings, and we have uses. There's residential uses, there's commercial uses, there's farming, agricultural. So those are all established in town today. And they are today, they're either legal, meaning under the current zoning, the buildings are in the right place, the use is approved, they're legal, or they're illegal. An example of an illegal would be, for example, someone that puts up a building without a building permit. It's illegal. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but it's illegal. It's that status. Or you may have legally non-conforming lots or parcels, structures or buildings or uses today. An example of that would be right out here on Route 7. At one time, there was no zoning and there's residents. At some time, the forefathers of this town put zoning in place and they said, this is commercial. They didn't kick the people out of their houses. They were grandfathered to residential use in a commercial district. So that's what we have today. If the board were to adopt the Hamlet, we still have lots, we still have structures, we still have uses, just like we have today. None of that changes. They remain either legal, okay, so if you have out in one of these proposed Hamlet districts, a business that falls into that list that was approved in the Hamlet, you remain legal. If you have an illegal structure or illegal use today, it doesn't matter what happened, it remains illegal. If you have a business in the commercial district today that's not listed as approved in the Hamlet district, it becomes legally non-conforming or grandfathered. Nothing changes. So,
Let me stick in one
go ahead.
thing.
So I'd like to give you, questions too, so.
Yeah, but let me stick in just one thing. As I said at the very beginning, this is a proposal. Every part of it is a proposal, including the list of uses that are not allowed in the Hamlet district. This goes from us, this is our best shot at what we believe would be good for the Hamlet, to them. And then it goes to a public meeting with all of you again. But if there's someone feels that putting in, and frankly, I love M&M Motors, okay? And I love White, I love the name of the driveway into White's Motor Home Sales. But the whole reason, and I recall the meeting, the whole reason that got added, auto sales, is because we didn't want something huge here, okay? But you're not huge, and I think it's a wonderful part of the
Yeah, well,
growing
unless you turn
Hamlet.
into a,
So,
10,000 more people to move into this town, you're not gonna get a car lot with that in here.
exactly, so I think that, from my point of view, I would take that out. And these are the guys to do that, okay? Because, to me, that's just, there's nothing that is against the spirit of the Hamlet in M&M Motors or White's Motor Sales. They're fine, they're old, they've been here for a long time, they don't detract from anything. It needs fine tuning and it needs your input. So, and they need your input. So they don't just say, oh, we can't do this for God, because it costs so much. It doesn't cost so much.
Right.
It change.
Mary Ann and Peter Lawler?
Just a comment. We in Rotterdam are overwhelmed with problems in the way in which the future appears. We have Rotterdam Mall, which is falling apart. We have a mall on Altamont Avenue, which is falling apart. No matter what entrance you take into Rotterdam, it looks like the town is less than optimal. What you are trying to do, I believe, is so critical for the residents to maintain the quality of your town as well as the quality of the residential and commercial establishments. It's absolutely critical because what is going to happen without a vision, without a plan, without this kind of discussion is what is happening to Rotterdam. It is falling apart. And it is of great concern to everyone because we are in 33 homes in Country Walk Estates. And to have something like this, to bring family, friends, walk through the neighborhood, bike, is absolutely the dream of what we would all hope. It is the quality of our lives. And so I commend you for all that you have done.
Thank you. Andy Brick?
Hi, my firm represents a number of property owners in both of the proposed Hamlet districts. We applaud the work that the committee has done for the last 14 months. We appreciate your efforts. I did have a number of questions and some comments that I would ask you and the town board to consider. The first question would be, how were the specific uses enumerated as permitted, special use versus prohibited? How are they determined? For those of us that were involved in the distribution facility application, traffic, especially here in the Route 7 corridor, was a huge issue. It was a dominant issue during that review process. And I was wondering how much emphasis was placed upon potential traffic impacts vis-a-vis each use that you would be permitting or prohibiting, and whether or not their traffic impacts to this corridor were calculated into that analysis. For example, you now allow pharmacies, but you don't allow mini warehouses, whereas a warehouse has much less traffic use than a pharmacy and much less traffic impact and trip generation. So I was just wondering how much emphasis was placed upon the actual traffic impacts that would result from the Hamlet zoning here on Route 7, more so than the one out on 20. Along the same line, how much emphasis was placed upon tax base, assessed value? Clearly, some uses traditionally attain a higher assessed value and create more of a tax base versus other uses, and how much of the potential impact to the town's tax base to keep the town tax non-existent went into the calculus of determining what would be permitted versus what would be prohibited. And also impact upon groundwater resources. What a hamlet does by its very nature is cluster and make more dense the development. And how much analysis was placed upon each individual allowable uses, prohibited uses, impact to groundwater resources and water needs. In terms of the gateway overlay, we represent the property owner of the lots on the other side of Princetown Plaza, which would be in the gateway overlay. We would ask you to consider revisiting the gateway overlay. We don't think it's necessary. We think it's redundant. You already have, through the proposed Hamlet, the ability to regulate development through a special use permit, as well as the design standards that you're proposing. And we would submit that rather than further constraining that land with the gateway overlay, we think the town is sufficiently protected to obtain the types of uses and the look and feel they want for their entranceway through the special use permit process and the design standard process. So we'd ask you if you would revisit that.
Okay, you really need to stop the whole series because I haven't been taking notes. You actually want answers as opposed to just making a speech.
Okay.
And you should pause after 3, and then we'll go on with 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8, 9, however many you got.
Okay, and I apologize. And
No, that's okay.
the last one I had, Mr. Bowman, was just simply, what is the timeline for the drafting and review of an environmental impact statement. This being a type 1 action on the seeker, whether or not there's any type of timeline in place now for the creation of the environmental impact statement.
Okay, I can't answer the fourth one, but I'll start with the first one, which is what did we, if I recall correctly, is what did we place as our criteria for picking the things we did? And the simplest answer, and you can read the minutes of our meetings, and you can know exactly what the criteria were from reading those, because they're on the town website. And our secretary did an excellent job of transcribing what we really said. But as I recall, the primary thing that we all took into consideration is what do we want to have there? I voted for a grocery store.
I got
You
it.
may have gotten that one. Drugstore too, but that's kind of secondary because it's, hopefully I won't have to use it that often. But I do have to go shopping, and I prefer not to do my local shopping at, although Stewart's is wonderful with its free air and all that. I kind of prefer not to do regular weekly shopping at a place that primarily offers 50 shades of candy and soda. But that was the first question. I think most of us picked the things that we felt we really wanted and that would serve the town, that would form a good basis for a kind of a community that could grow up where people would want to live. So that's the answer to that one straight up. Second one was?
How much analysis, how much emphasis was placed upon the potential traffic impacts of the uses that you selected or prohibited?
Do you recall any?
None, but to your point about the previous project, that concern was over trucks specifically. And we don't really see this project largely increasing truck traffic.
Yeah, and as to the gateway question, were you really planning on doing a bar or a tavern right next door here? I mean, that's fine. If you want to, we can negotiate all that.
Let me say this, if we did multi-unit housing and we were able to put a tavern-type restaurant smack in the middle of the housing with pedestrian accoutrements off of the plaza rather than off of Route 7, we think it would be beneficial and an attribute to the community that would attract people to the multifamily housing,
Yeah.
provided it's done right.
Yeah.
And we think that the ability through the design standards and the special use permit process, the town has the ability to control to make sure it is done right. So that was all.
I couldn't agree with you more. I personally would support you 100%. I would love to have a nice local bar.
I don't know if you noticed on the overlay district, the line was revised. It's only the first lot across the street.
Yeah, but it's their lot too.
Pardon me?
It's their lot too. They
Yeah, but he
have,
mentioned multiple lots, it's one.
Yeah, I think they have 2 or 3 going up.
On the other side of the street, it's one lot.
Lot.
We redrew the line.
Oh, okay, I didn't realize that.
And it ends with Princetown Plaza on this side of the road proposed.
The only other question was the timeline, any idea?
I don't know, it's kind of up to you guys. More than us at this point. We were asked to, as quickly as possible. I'm sorry it took 14 months instead of, 8 or 9 months. I really am. But it took what it took, and we did meet twice a month, and you can read all that stuff.
There's no professional district makers on this committee. I mean, this is new.
14 months for the project this size is not a long amount of time. So I think you turned it around relatively quickly. And again, thank you for your efforts. I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Jack White,
How you doing?
very good.
Again, as you were mentioning, my business is in what you call the gateway, and it would be on if I wanted to sell it or I wanted to do something. But my issue right here with the zoning change and stuff that you have, since I read them, it's not exactly the way you presented it, so nice and cherry, and it's gonna be good for everyone. But any reads it, they actually see the clearance. My concern is everybody keeps saying resident here, resident here, resident here. Nobody said businesses, and this is gonna affect all of us as far as our businesses in the town. I contacted probably 24 businesses in town of Princetown, not a single one by any town board member, anyone, was ever contacted, sent a letter, put on any of these surveys, or anything else. You have any comprehensive plan?
Carver Laraway was.
Carver was the only one, his attorney, you're right.
No, Wasn't he personally there?
Yeah, he was personally there.
Yeah, it says him and his attorney.
Yeah.
And I talked to everyone else. You know, when I first moved here, I don't know, 15, 18 years ago, whatever it was, and I came here as a business, it was very welcoming here. They came here and they said, listen, Mr. White, we would love to have you come here, and we'd love to have you invest your money and your time and put a business up in our commercial zone. And I'm sorry, I didn't attend the meetings, I didn't attend the town board meetings, because I'm tired when I get done working, and I go home at night. So when I finally saw and read what was in here, I was mad at myself. So what I did was I contacted all the businesses, and that's my concern now. Now going over this and reading it, and like you said, it's a proposal, and so now I would like to ask that with this proposal, we have businesses part of it, since it's making the changes to us, it's affecting us.
Absolutely.
You have us as part of it.
But the last thing that this committee wants to do is make losers out of current property owners, residents, or business. We don't,
Right.
at all.
Mhm.
And in fact, your business would be legally non-conforming, it would be grandfathered.
Mhm.
The current zoning law, as it reads today, is restrictive to a grandfathered property. We didn't quite get to it, but, I mean, this board thinks that the current zoning law, as it applies to legally non-conforming lots, should be loosened. And really not be made to punish someone like you that made an investment in this town previously. We don't want that. You don't want it, we don't want it.
And that's why I'm asking. From this point, with this proposal, you have businesses, someone in the town.
Well, businesses, residents, everyone that's got a stake today.
Exactly. And make it feel like, it felt like when I first came to this town, like we were a family in this town. Everybody worked together, everybody wanted to work together. But this, all these changes happened without,
So looking back, I think, to be frank with you, I think our focus was on development more than establishment. And that's probably why Carter was involved, because he's got property to be developed. We wanted to hear from him, our shortfall, for sure.
Yeah, no one's perfect, but I mean, I meant what I said when I personally think that as long as we can avoid the huge, I have no problem with the two places that I've already spoken to. I mean, frankly, I kind of get a smile every time I see a Happy Trail sign, so. I think you add to the town, I think you've been a great resident, and I think we all need to take a look at all this, but as I've said a couple of times before, in anything like this, the devil is in the details. It's a question of discussing the individual items. Is that really something that we should restrict, or is it not? And as long as we can avoid the reason that we didn't want it, which was an enormous car lot that would take up half of the space, and I don't think that would happen, frankly. I have no opposition to that. And if it's not there, then you have a legally conforming use.
as long as this is a proposal, we can work on it.
We have
That's
to.
what we want to do, as far as all the businesses that I spoke with, that's what we want to do.
Yeah, but we didn't
We
bring
want to
in,
work on this together.
we didn't bring in stone slabs or, it wasn't written in concrete or iron or anything else. It's a proposal, it's a place to start. If we don't start someplace, we won't get anyplace.
Nancy Lee?
I just signed in to be here.
All right, thank you. I'm thinking that's David Selter? Can't read the writing, whatever it was. Maybe not David. S-E-T-L-E-R? D? Settle?
Reed, probably. Reed?
Oh, it could be Reed, yeah.
I didn't think I wrote that, but that. I'll be the first one to admit I don't know a lot about this. I run Turnpike Power, so I'm on the gateway, as far as I can tell, on Route 20. My biggest concern is, and understanding, and maybe I'm wrong, that you're trying to put residents into commercial area, correct?
We're trying to create an area to have both. Yes.
Well, that does a couple of things. It's like the guy down in Gilman that was there for over 100 years with his family farm. Gilman said, yeah, put up all these houses. Oh my God, I can't stand this, I smell pig manure. They put the guy out of business. Only because the residents were 20-1. So my concern is, I'm looking around, one of my neighbors, he's got a paint shop. Oh, I don't like the smell of paint, it stinks. My second neighbor's got the same paint shop. I run a power equipment business. I run chainsaws all day long, I got a guy out there testing lawnmowers and whatnot. Oh, I can't stand the noise. On Saturday afternoon, we're trying to have a party. Well, that's too bad. That's my business. It's my livelihood. It feeds my family. So all these residents now are against me because you allowed the Joe public to build homes around my shop, our area. They don't like it. So what am I going to do? Am I going to be put out of business? Am I going to have the cops down there, you're making too much noise? How is this going to work? How is this going to meld together? That's what I want to know. Why don't you encourage more business to come into the commercial area? Furthermore, the last time I checked, residential homes put 10 to 20 times the strain on a community than a business does. Your water district, it's not going to be big enough. I know you got good wells here. You're on top of the best aquifer in the world. I love the water here. But now you're going to need sewer districts. Who's going to pay for it? I love that guy's question right there. Who's going to pay for this? You need sewer districts now. You think that all the homes are going to pay for that? Because you're adding? You're only adding 1 or 2 and 3 and 4. But they need it now. So yeah, over time, those community homes will pay for it, but not right away. Who's going to pay for it like he is? It's not the sidewalks, it's not the parks. It's the infrastructure you need now. You don't need it with commercial business. They take care of themselves.
Well stated.
Taylor?
I signed into the meeting, but I agree with Jack.
All right. Lana Cooley?
No, my main concern was just like Mike's one, like when we go to get ready to sell, properties can be changed, person's not gonna be able to do businesses in there like we did. You know, it was a main concern, and nobody ever answered it. I mean, it's gotta be grandfathered. Well, you have retail there for, repair shops, but we have repair shop and auto sales. Now, you're not gonna let anybody have a lot.
Well, again,
When that'd be the main thing that somebody would buy our property, that's what they would wanna do. And that's not, you know, that's not fair.
no, if you're, that's part of the details that we need this kind of feedback from in order to be able to say what things should or shouldn't be allowed in the Hamlet.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be, come down to here to, you know, go over it to find out if you sell your property. It should be a yes or a no. You know, that's what it's gonna come down to.
What it comes down to really is a property by property, scenario by scenario analysis. What's the impact? What's the outcome? Because everyone is unique.
Yeah. Like us, you know, we have the ideal spot for businesses. And now we're gonna have to go back to the town to see if you can be approved before you buy my property. That could take months.
Years.
Years. Just to get a permit to do something takes forever.
And we've had it for over 50 years. Not even the commercial property.
Usually, and the exceptions are existing places that are on that quote prohibited list, and that has to be dealt with item by item. But generally speaking, when you allow more uses for a piece of property, it becomes more valuable.
Yeah, but not if it's not, if you put it into a hamlet now, it's got to be pre-approved.
If,
Yes.
no,
No, you want to sell it.
Yeah, yeah, if you're gonna sell it,
Yeah, see,
there's no impact.
it should be
Well,
just
you own it, there's
pre-approved.
no impact.
Right, yeah, the point is, if we go to sell it, or if we want to sell it,
Eventually, somebody in the family will want to sell it, whether it's her or us, our
or
kids.
whoever.
Eventually, it'll be for sale, and it could be worth nothing.
So if I can interrupt here for a second, just on this one subject, I think Mike has a little bit of input to selling.
I'm not quite sure if it's made clear the law on the prior non-conforming use. So that if you have a use that is legal under current zoning,
Right.
when the zoning changes, I think he indicated that you would become grandfathered prior non-conforming use.
Right.
That use, when you go to sell the property, doesn't change. You can sell that to someone who wants to continue the same use that you have.
Okay.
The
That's
one
right.
caveat, the one thing that you have to be aware of is that it not be discontinued, so that you break a chain in that use, so that typically it's a year. If the property is not used for that purpose for a year, you could lose the standing as a prior non-conforming use.
And that will be in writing, right?
Well, that's in the zoning law. So it is in writing now.
If they had
That's,
13 months to sell it, then you can lose your grandfather, is what they're saying.
no, we were actually.
well, if you go out of business, so you have a current business, but then you shut down, and you're out of business for a year or more, you can't, then you lose that non-conforming use status.
What if you lease it, if you're leasing
If
it?
you're leasing it, that's fine. You don't lose the status because it continues, the use continues. So that's the only thing to be aware of when you have those changes.
Right. We also, we were talking, we ran a dry run on this last night, and the question of exactly this, the grandfather use came up, and we discussed it for quite a while. We feel that the existing other laws in zoning need to be changed for this, because when you go from commercial to suddenly your use is not approved in the district, but you can keep on doing it, and then suddenly you fall into this 12-month thing, we think that that should be adjusted here and lengthened. We also think that the part which we haven't touched on, which is that if you have a non-conforming use, but it's legal, but it's non-conforming, you're not supposed to expand it. We think that needs to be changed so that people can expand their existing non-conforming but legal use. It was before, but it needs to be in that, because that works that way in other places. Other places give you some latitude in being able to expand your existing use, even though it's non-conforming, as long as it was conforming when you started. You can add to it. So I think that those are both things we want to touch on in discussion of the zoning law as a whole.
All right, Lana, are you comfortable with Mike's answer?
Yes.
Somebody else was asking, ma'am, are you comfortable with the answer?
Yeah.
Keats, K-E-T-Z. Who's that on writing tonight? Sorry. We can skip down to Ronald. Ketchum? Ketchum?
Basically, Reed stole my thunder. Stole my thunder. We don't live, we have Ketchum Service and Towing, and we have Chuck Wagon Diner. And I see, we have the special use permit. We moved in with our gas station, that's what we started with, in the late 70s. And everyone loved us. They don't love us that much anymore, I guess. Cost us $148,000 to put a septic system in just for the diner. So, since they stole my thunder, all I have left to say is, since we don't live in Duanesburg or Princetown, I was unaware of all of this going on. Nobody sent me a survey.
It was, I
None
don't
of
know
the
what the survey
businesses
was.
said it.
Pardon me?
A lot of the business wasn't sent that.
No, I knew nothing about it, so I was
So,
contacted.
hold on, one meeting, please. So I don't remember exactly because it was before my time. This survey, when it was 7 or 8 years ago, Vic, or Joe?
And I looked in the Gazette today, Sunday, there was nothing about a special meeting tonight.
Well, it was published,
Yes, it was.
yeah.
Last week.
If we gotta do 10 days ahead of time. is
10
what-
days. Legal notices, all right, I didn't read it.
Yeah.
So they stole my thunder, you answered some of my questions.
All right. All right, so maybe we'll come back. Ronald?
Yeah, my name's Ronald Friends, I own Unit Step Company, and presently I'm zone manufacturing. I believe I'm probably the only one in the town zoned for manufacturing. And it looks as though I'll be changed. You'll just change me to commercial or industrial. And I have the same question too. I'm grandfathered in, but I'm 72. If I want to sell this business one of these years, the way I understood it before you made these comments was that I'm not going to be in the Hamlet's allowable manufacturing anymore. So therefore, I won't be able to sell it as a manufacturing plant in the future. So I got that wrong, obviously, you got it right. The use goes with the land, not the owner.
Right.
It's attached to the property
You
itself.
can sell it in the same.
Well, the other comment I have is about sidewalks. That's an easy one. If somebody wants a building permit, they usually gotta put a sidewalk in front of the business. But that brings up another problem too with the strip mall proposed by Carver, for example, which is, I'm not against, but every little store in this little community is gonna have to have its own septic system. That's gonna put quite a draw on the land, you know, but
Carver's needs
that'll be an impact.
that actually.
Yeah. That's all I have.
Thank you. Fred?
My questions have been answered, thanks so much.
Christine Waters?
I just signed in.
Okay. Nick Laraway?
I just have one question about the housing that's being allowed in this. I know we've gone back and forth, and we have been to a couple of meetings when this was written up, but currently there's no actual housing that's under a permitted use. It's all either not permitted at all, such as the detached single family or the duplexes. And then the rest under number 11 and 12 for special uses is all requiring a special use permit. We were wondering if that was something that can be looked at, and some of the potential uses we put under permitted uses, so every single build out isn't required in many town board meetings.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
That was it for the sign-in sheet. I'd like to continue the discussion because I think it's some great feedback for the town board, for Paul and Vic, who are two chairs of the committees and both on the ZRC. So if you have additional questions, just raise your hand and I'll call them out. There's one.
I'm Debbie Gentile, I live on Gifford Church Road. Can I ask a question and then I want to just make my comments? Carver Laraway made a presentation about a strip mall. Could I just know a little bit about that and where it's going to be?
Well, I'll start off with part of the answer and then I'll leave it up to, probably 3 years ago, Carver, and Andy Brick is actually his attorney or part of the firm, but he came to the town board and made a proposal next to Lana Turner's, that lot next to Lana Turner's. And
I don't know
Where is it?
Route
Where the
20.
ball field is today.
You know where the ball field is?
Oh, okay.
And then he made a presentation of a small, like a mixed-use townhouse facility or area. So that was 2 or 3 years ago. Since then, when we encouraged the ZRC after the comprehensive plan, it was our intention to be as open and, to ask as many people to come in and present and ask to share their ideas. And Carver and Andy and the firm, Carver Laraway was great enough to come in and work with the ZRC because our thought was that there's the greatest meeting, right? You got a developer who wants to develop and a town who's got some ideas, put them together, and hopefully everybody's happy. And that's, you know, where it came from. So, you know, I could ask Paul or maybe Nick Lowey if Carver would be willing to come back and make a presentation
Okay, we're
again.
talking about 5 stores, what are,
I wasn't actually here for the Carver Larway presentation to the ZRC, but.
I can give you guys just a brief little bit about it. It was an idea that was had in the past, and basically it was tabled for a while just because the current zoning didn't allow it. They have been meeting every couple weeks for the past year. We attended a couple of those meetings just to share our ideas and a basic little sketch of what they were looking at. It's something that they have taken and they've tweaked a little bit of what you see today in order to make it easier, just make it so that that's something that could potentially happen in the future. It's still something that's very preliminary, and between now and whenever the Hamlet gets put in, I'm sure it'll be many changes to this, and I don't think anyone was, we just happened to know that it was going on, and we've attended a couple of the meetings just to share our thoughts on it, and I think they can speak more with the intended final outcome of this whole thing for Route 20 and for Route 7.
okay, well, I had my question.
Sorry, if I could just get to the supervisor's remarks, we don't want to convey strip mall, we're not talking about something like Stuyvesant Plaza. We're not talking about Route 9 in Latham. The idea was a small, maybe 3 or 4 small commercial uses in a smaller building with a small parking lot. It was not something drastic. We didn't want to convey the message it's going to be some type of large strip mall.
Well, then, my comments are, one of the beautiful things about Princetown is the fact that we don't suffer from a great deal of light pollution. I lived in Albany for 35 years and I never got to see many stars. I am thrilled that the Ketchums and the gas station turn their lights off at night, as do all of the businesses along Route 20. So you still get that feeling that you're in the country. My concern would be, I didn't see anything about lighting, signage.
So we did workshop lighting, I don't know if it didn't make it into the document, but there was discussion of the lighting to not point up to the sky, that had to point down. There was discussion around lighting.
Okay.
I
So
don't
that was
know
one
why it
of
wouldn't be.
my concerns. The other is Route 20, and somebody just mentioned it briefly. I come out onto Route 20 from Gifford Church Road every day, and I do this at least 5 times before I have the courage to cross that road, and I'm not a weenie driver, because those cars and trucks coming from Dwaynesburg get up ahead of steam, and they really come flying through there. If there were to be more buildings in that ballpark area, would they have access to Route 20, or would they have to go to Saddle Hill Road, or how would they do that? Because you're adding a lot more traffic coming out onto Western Avenue in what I perceive, and maybe I'm wrong, as a bit of a dangerous spot to come out on. And the other thing, and I think that you have a plan, and that's good, because to move ahead without a plan, you wind up looking like other places that you don't want to look like, and what Slingerland's and Voorheesville have gone through fighting big box stores. But at the same time, if you go ahead, and I know you did a lot with aesthetics, I mean, we have, you know, I look every day, and I know he's a great businessman and he's done marvelous things, at those ginormous Carver earth eater things every day. And if we just make sure that whatever is done, there is some kind of an aesthetic block, so that, you know, you want this to be a gateway, or, you know, people to come in and say, wow, look at Princetown, this looks great. Well, you need to pay some attention to that. So light pollution, also water. I mean, your water is great. Oh, I know how big my septic tank and my leach field is for one house, so those are things I would be concerned with. But I appreciate the fact that there's a plan, you know, to look at.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have just one question. I seem to have done the same thing that Mr. Laraway has done in front of this board 3 years ago, and I was tabled the same way, and there still hasn't been brought back to the table. And I would like to know when that's gonna happen.
Bob, we're working through it. This is what the zoning is
Mike,
about. I'm not gonna argue with you, Bob. If you wanna argue, that's fine, we'll go outside, but I'm.
Well, I just want to understand why this petition is being pushed so far.
What petition, Bob?
Okay.
Not yours, you're saying another petition. What other petition?
Carver's petition.
He's not-
Where you met with the attorney, you met with all you guys, and you guys want to do all this stuff.
He didn't
I did the
petition us.
same thing.
He didn't petition us.
Oh, he didn't petition you?
No.
Oh, but he's trying to set it up that way. It just, you know, I want to know when, okay, a problem that exists in the town can't be taken care of, but we're gonna start something else. Why? And when are we gonna fix what the problems are today?
Do you have a question for the ZRC?
They both know my problem. They know I petitioned you guys 3 years ago,
And
and it was tabled.
so the
So
answer-
when are we going to finish what we're supposed to be doing?
This is about the Hamilton division, or district.
I understand, but
Do you have a question?
they agreed with me that you guys should be changing.
Do you have a question for
Change
Paul?
after you run out of tax money. There you go.
So, do you have a question? Go ahead, sir.
The few meetings I've been to, I've listened to
Could you
sidewalks.
announce your name, sorry?
I'm John Tooley, I live on Route 20.
Thank you.
I've heard sidewalks, bike trails, truck runoff lanes. Where's all this property coming from? Whose property you're putting all this stuff on? What property's up there for sale other than Carver's?
We're talking Route 20.
Yes.
Or Route 7. And Route 7.
I can't speak for Route, and Route 7, but I can't speak for Route 7. I'm Route 20. I'm right next to Reed. And I go up to Carver's.
So I think we're, again, maybe coming off subject a little bit. Well, we're not, the discussion is about the Hamlet district.
Yeah.
And asking.
Isn't that my district?
Absolutely, and we didn't propose sidewalks at this point.
Well, I've heard, just sitting here tonight, I've heard sidewalks and bike trails.
I actually don't think I've heard the term truck runoff.
Parks,
for
recreation
quite a while, and certainly not in this town.
There was, not at this meeting,
Nor at any meeting
truck
that I've
lanes
been
to pull off at 20 to get up into Carver's property once it's developed.
Mhm.
This is all, you know, that's my question, is all that gonna be thrown at us if this does get approved?
No, the broad strokes are that we're trying to change the uses in commercial
Okay,
property.
so now with the sidewalks and the bike trails, they're gonna have to take, I also live there,
Yeah.
they're gonna take our frontage then.
So we should probably just try to address the sidewalks and infrastructure and, as Mr. Esposito said, the costs. So the costs, like anytime you put, if you build a house or a small business or even a large business, the costs for the infrastructure are on the developer or the builder, right? And you gotta put your driveway in, you gotta put your water in, you gotta put your communications in, your electric in. That's all on the developer or the house owner. That includes sidewalks, that's all on the owner. There's
On
none.
the owner.
Sorry?
You said on the owner?
Well, owner, developer, who's ever building a house, eventually somebody owns
All
it.
right, existing property that's there now, like my house.
So,
If the town decides you want sidewalks through there because of what you're having there,
well,
I have to lose
okay,
more of my
so-
frontage.
Well, okay. So if, we'll probably try to address costs first. So if it's on US highways, right? DOT, state highways, sorry. DOT understands.
One is a US highway.
Thank you. So the New York State DOT understands the requirement that if the cost and if it's a requirement, the community thinks they need it, then they'll pay for it. So, but that still doesn't take away of whether you're gonna have to grant them access or not. I don't see this town considering that the major word that I've heard on all these meetings, like, we wanna stay rural, we wanna stay rural, we wanna stay rural. That was the number one, and I don't see, I'm on Ennis Road, I'm not even sure you can put sidewalks on Ennis Road, but I don't want sidewalks on Ennis Road. I don't know anybody in town that wants sidewalks, but if you're in a new subdivision and then maybe sidewalks are appropriate for that new subdivision. In these hamlets, I don't see the requirement, but again, going back to the cost of the infrastructure, that's on the builder or the developer. Again, if it's just, a developer comes in and builds 10 houses and he has to put a road in, he's liable for the water, the hookups, the sewer, the electric, the communication, phones, everything included, and that's on the developer. So, I don't see a lot of cost to this. A new road is gonna cost maybe some plowing, right? We have to plow it, but, there may be some other costs, but is that all set by taxes? I don't know.
Mike, there's also nothing in the proposal that has to do with sidewalks.
I think when sidewalks, bike trails, parks are brought up, I mean, it's more of a visual thing that could happen over time.
Once you start something,
I don't
it'll
see it,
evolve
I
into
don't
it.
think see it written in here at all.
Still have page 5 if you look at it.
On D, so, page 5.
Okay. All right, again, let's try to, if you have a question, or if you can ask something in a form of a question, like a Jeopardy, sir, if you can stand up and, or just announce your name and.
Bill Park's my name, I own Adirondack Combustion up on Route 7. This kind of thing always stirs everybody up because there's always an untrustworthy side that people take of politicians. So my concern, I guess, Mr. White brought me a pamphlet, and I don't know that I'm affected by this, but it would seem that if we're starting to look at zoning in the town, it could affect me.
And you're in Duanesburg or in Princetown?
No, I'm in Princetown.
Okay, sorry.
I guess I don't really know how any of this has been conveyed to the public. So I don't want to say that you didn't advertise it, because maybe you did, but I guess I'd ask, has this been something that's been advertised, these meetings and hearings and the like?
So, to answer a couple of questions, so I know attendance at our town board meetings is minimal.
I'm sure.
And that's just the way it is. But, so, we put together the committee, we advertise and saying, we've given updates on our newsletter, saying ZRC is working on this, there's a presentation on that. It's on the website, the minutes are there. We try to talk about it at the town board meetings. I mean,
that's fine, I understand.
I thought it was important enough that we took money out of our pockets to put that newsletter together.
So really, my next question is...
Let's have one meeting, please.
Is there an implementation schedule here? Do we have an expectation to have this in 6 months, a year? Is there any expectation on the part of, and it's the board that has to pass this, the town board has to pass this ordinance, or whatever you're gonna pass, is there an expectation of time?
Yeah, I can't speak for the rest of the board, but to me, it'd be when it's right. I mean, these guys are taking a lot of feedback. They took feedback 2 weeks ago, which was exactly why or 3 weeks ago, it was last month, at the one meeting, and we thought it was important enough to send it out. I got the date wrong, so I apologize again for that. But again, we're here tonight. I think this is exactly what we want to do. We want to work with Mr. White and yourself, and in the next meeting with Paul on the ZRC, but come in and share the ideas.
I think
that's what we're trying to do.
We're not always gonna get what we want, but if we can get it middle of the road to where most of us can agree on this, and it's not gonna, I mean, small business people can't afford much more tax.
And neither can the landowner.
I mean, that building up there wasn't worth very much until we took it, and now we're paying a pretty substantial tax, and I don't need any more.
I think we're all very sensitive.
But I'd be very, if the board takes some time, and they look this over, wrestle with the different aspects of it, and, public here are satisfied that there was enough time put in on this to where everybody's concerns were heard, and, most everybody's concerns are addressed, I think, it would be all right, so.
I think some of the, feedback tonight and last week and 2 weeks ago was spectacular. I think Paul and Vic and...
Absolutely. What I said at the very beginning is that, let me just stress it again, it's a proposal. And we really, and every word that I wrote here is spoke tonight, which is, we want to ensure but your input is very welcome and it's needed because we want to ensure that this proposal meets the desires and needs of as many residents of the town as possible. We were just 7 people in a room to which we invited the public, but they seldom came. And we'll take responsibility for what we wrote, but we will say again, it's a proposal, and that's why we're having this meeting. This is the first time we've brought it out.
I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Bruce Quay. I'm a relatively new owner of a property on Route 20, right next to Carver, actually, Capital Land Material Handling. So, and just as a follow-up to the gentleman who articulated the concerns of the commercial owner and some of the potential inherent conflicts between residential and commercial. And I also know very little about the project. Maybe I'd like to understand the residential versus commercial breakout of all those constituents in Princetown. What is that breakout? What are the percentages of residential owners versus commercial owners? Does anybody know that?
Yeah.
It's actually in the comprehensive plan, I think, right? Do we have a copy of the comprehensive plan available?
Now, somebody must have a ballpark idea, right?
It's much more residents.
He knows.
But is it
Throughout the
is
town
it-
or just the district? Is that, I guess my question is, are you talking just the overlay of commercial districts, or are you talking townwide?
I'm talking about all the people that you're trying to make sure are taken into consideration as you look at formalizing the plan to do what's right for both residential and commercial properties. Whatever that population is, how does that break out between residential and commercial?
There's a lot more residences in Princetown. We're
90
talking about the Hamlet district itself, because the Hamlet district itself right now is zoned commercial, all of it.
Yeah, but that's not what you're talking about in
No.
terms of the people that you want to make sure you're representing, do the right thing for.
Yeah,
That's
we
the-
want to do the right thing for people who like me. Sorry to say it again, want a grocery store, or any of the other things that the Hamlet might bring. Those kind of local services, because most of the places, the businesses along Route 7 and 5, they're wonderful, but they don't particularly serve the people in Princetown. We tend to go to Rotterdam. We go to Price Chopper, or we go to Hannaford, or we go any other direction for groceries and for drugs and so forth. So, yeah, it would, a center that was able to attract those businesses would benefit the people in the rest of
I certainly understand the vision, and I also clearly appreciate your recognizing the need for current business owners that have invested 5, 10, 50 years in their businesses to be able to monetize that business someday, whether it is the existing business they have or perhaps something else that is similar to it, that be as valuable a objective as what is the residential objective, which outweighs commercial by probably 90 to 10 or something like that. It's the proportion of residential to commercial is significant, huh? Thank you.
You said you're pretty new?
There, well,
All right. On our website is the comprehensive plan, which has got a lot of tables and statistics in it, just for, I can't find it right off the bat, but.
that would typically not hit my desk on a daily basis, and I appreciate that. You know, that's one of the reasons I wanted to understand how many businesses are in this thing, and how, what was the effort, as somebody said, to kind of bring people up to speed on something that is probably a disproportionately important item on the board's agenda. But I'm going to do a better job of trying to keep up to date on the website, which is what I did all day today for the first time.
Sorry.
Steve Brown, Newsbeck Road. I was looking through the businesses that were allowed and not allowed, and what was the thinking behind no tattoo parlors, but okay for psychics?
Yeah. I recommend you read that. I strongly recommend you read that particular, I can't tell you which day it was, but if you want, I'll put a report on it. It's posted on the website. You can get that. It wasn't, I wasn't strongly into that discussion one way or the other, but I found it amusing. You have to have lighter moments.
Yes, sir.
My name is Gary Cuomo, I live up the street here in 7. I just got a quick question. I know this is just a proposal and all that.
once the final draft is done, is there any way that we can have a meeting like this before you guys vote on it?
Absolutely, that's actually by law, that there's a public hearing. And then there's a 10-day process. We posted on, it's the residence community copy of the proposed law, goes to public hearing. There's actually the seeker, which Andy Rick mentioned. So there's a few processes still that have to be completed before we get to the end here. Again, as long as, Vic and Paul and the committee are willing, I'm fine with continuing to work on this, again, with input from the business owners. We try to be as, in the newsletters, it's on the websites, with the video up, we try as hard as we can to get out. And again, we sent the emails out, we sent a private newsletter out. So we want your input. We want your input. So continue asking questions here. Yes, ma'am.
Could you tell me why these didn't go to businesses? These papers explaining this?
We just made that up and distributed it.
I don't have a computer, and I didn't,
Well, we just
I'm
printed them
not
up
a
tonight.
resident.
Right, we just printed them up tonight.
Yeah,
No,
she's
we're
saying,
not
I want to
really
know
know
about
why
the
she
business.
didn't
All right, one question. Oh, that one.
Why don't businesses get it?
It should have come from the tax addresses, so I got some return addresses too, some people wouldn't deliver. So all I can check is what is on the tax rolls, because that's what we use for the addresses. All I can do is check.
I don't have a computer, and I didn't get any of this, and I don't live in a district.
Yes, sir. But one second. Yeah, so I'll ask him to check the tax rolls, because that's where, one is, please, we don't want to get into shouting here. So it's from the tax rolls, we got all the addresses. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Mark Randy up on Route 7. And, one of my concerns is, and I think I brought this to your attention last time I was here, most of this property you're talking about is already occupied by homeowners, few businesses. So how is this plan going to take effect? Is it going to be a 50-year program? I mean, where do you expect everybody's going to go to make these changes, number one? Number two, we don't have a municipality here that salts walkways, repairs water mains, and does those sort of things, which we will eventually need, and that's an expense that this town is going to definitely incur. Where's that all going to come from? Where are those tax dollars going to come from?
So the cost.
I think that if you talk to most of the residents in this town, especially in this area, everybody would agree that they're pretty satisfied with what we have going right now. And I'm not saying that I want trailer parks out here or, malls that are gonna fail or anything like that. I absolutely don't wanna see anything like that. But we gotta meet some common ground here. I mean, a lot of this stuff, most of the people haven't been notified about these meetings or anything else. I think that's a huge concern. I think people need to be notified of this stuff going on. And I think this program needs a lot of work.
So I'll turn it over back to Paul in a second. So we try to follow, it was publicly noticed, that's by law. It was in the Gazette 10 days ago.
I understand that, but it needs to be improved, Mike. There's a lot of people sitting in this room that didn't.
They got here.
Well, we need to
by
improve.
talking to everybody.
Okay.
That's all, I'm not trying to make an
Right,
argument
it's
out
on
of
the
it, Mike.
website, yeah.
I just think it needs to be
Fair
fair.
The costs, again, please, sir, if there's let's say a business that wants to get built and it's the 5-unit store, it's gonna be an engineered septic system. Just like Carver's property, his 20-unit, whatever the design was at the time, it's an engineered solution. So it's gonna be an engineered septic solution.
Well, that also brings something else to mind for me. And,
So I guess if there's a cost to it,
yeah.
then it's on, again, the developer, it's an engineered solution.
And also the homeowner that possibly wants to do something on his property now
we're gonna incur costs from engineers, we're gonna incur costs from architects, we gotta
Nope,
bounce through the system here to try to have things approved.
nope.
Where's that all fall?
No,
So-
you're making that.
It's
part,
gonna
but-
be costly.
No, there's no cost on that. Again, that gets passed back to the developer. That's a pass.
But I'm saying as a
That's
homeowner,
right, I understand that.
if I'm gonna do something on my property with a lot of the new rules and regulations that are gonna come into effect.
So this, we're talking about the Hamlet district?
Yeah,
or-
absolutely, I live in Hamlet.
There are no restrictions here that make it any different from what it is. You're in a commercial zone right now. is that
Yes, I
correct? Okay. So you got the same shot in the Hamlet district as you do in a commercial. If nothing happens, it's the same deal. Nothing's changed about
The
that.
design criteria elevates in the Hamlet district.
The zoning criteria?
The
Oh,
design
how's that?
criteria
How's it-
in the Hamlet districts are an elevated criteria
Where?
than a standard commercial zone.
Only that they allow more things. I mean, I encourage you really to read this, because there aren't any elevated requirements suddenly.
So you're saying we can design our home?
The design criteria,
So,
aesthetic,
so I agree, you're right, but how does that impact an existing homeowner? I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around that.
Yeah.
wants to put an addition on
If you wanted to put an addition on an existing home,
Or build a garage or something for our business.
Or
Right
cut
now-
trees down, or,
Right,
you know,
right,
there's a
right
lot
now,
of.
okay, I'll give you the answer to that. Right now, according to the existing zoning regulations, if you are a grandfathered use, a legally non-conforming use, as they're calling it.
Grandfather means
Grandfather
with
means
existing.
there was a house
structures,
before,
right.
and then it got changed by these guys to a commercial zone, right? So you have already a non-conforming use. And if that's the case, and you want to make a change now, without the Hamlet district, if you just want to make a change right now, according to the existing laws that we have on our books, you can't. You can't expand your non-conforming use. That's the way it is right now. What I'm suggesting, and this doesn't make it any worse, in fact, what I tried to suggest about 45 minutes ago, was that we should add to this, or to zoning in general, a relaxing of that particular restriction in regard to moving into the Hamlet district in order to make it easier. And that would include residential uses, existing grandfathered residential uses that already, today, in the commercial zone, you can't improve. And that's just the way the law works, right now.
Can't improve it now because of the.
Because it's in a commercial zone.
you have a house, you have a residence in the commercial zone, it's legally non-conforming. According to our existing zoning, this is Article 9, that applies to your property, you can't increase it, you can't make it bigger, you cannot. We're proposing as part of the Hamlet district to amend this article to allow more flexibility, particularly to businesses, existing businesses, that may have a 10-year plan, halfway through the Hamlet comes and they can't expand their business, according to this. And, you know, homeowners, residents, the size of your house, that second garage falls under this. You can't legally do it today.
Yeah, and enhancing the house, if you want to keep it as a residence, enhancing the house enhances the Hamlet. Makes the Hamlet prettier. Makes it more attractive to other people. So,
Second, ma'am?
Hi, I'm Christine Walters. I spoke at the last meeting. I am the gateway on Route 7. We live in the house right next door, the White House, White farmhouse, and then the big barn right next to Jack White's business. I guess my question is, as homeowners and taxpayers in Princetown, I've been here 17 years. My husband pretty much grew up here his whole life. My mother-in-law her entire life. And we do have a big interest in what happens, you know, to the Hamlet and Princetown in general, and personally our property. As homeowners who've had their property on and off the market with now 3 to 4 different realtors, where are we generating this interest? I really would love to know. I mean, as far as this plan goes, it looks beautiful. It's a wonderful idea to be like, what does Princetown stand for? Oh, I drive up to Princetown and this is what it is, and that would be really where my house is right now. Where are we generating that? If you talk about the developers, Mr. Joyce, where are the developers? Who are the developers? Who's seeking this out to move this project forward? Are we leaving it up to my realtors and my,
Attorney already.
okay,
He's talking about the property on the other side, from the other side of town hall from you, and what they're planning on that, so, right?
I mean, we're talking about, you know,
But we're,
you said a year, you know, it's gonna happen in a year.
It's not gonna happen.
It's not gonna happen, maybe not in 5 years.
not those pictures.
Right, I understand that, but
5 years.
from a personal standpoint, like, we would like to move forward, and not in 7 years, not in 10 years. We would like to see something change, and certainly, we would love to drive by what used to be our old family's farm and see something that was nice and appealing to look at. But I was just curious as to where you were in far, when you talk about developers, or where that's coming from, like who, you're saying we have the one firm that's doing that right now, or
On
we?
Route 7 right now, yeah.
Okay. Not,
No, on Route 7, you're talking about the place right next to here, on the other
Okay.
side from their property.
but no, like, I mean, when you talk about,
Without making this change, without allowing that density, or allowing it, we can't create it. None of these guys can do that, I don't think, and any of them has a magic wand, I certainly don't. No one here has a magic wand, but if it's not allowed, it's not allowed, you can't do it.
right,
We're just trying to broaden the definition for these so that it could happen. We want it to happen, a number of us want it to happen. I mean, I'm looking at Carol McLean, who's the first person that put the bug in my head when we were on the ZRC back in 2004, and said, what does this town need? And we talked about the fact it needed a town.
yeah.
But it has to start somewhere. The comprehensive plan told us what was wanted by a fair number of the people in this town. And so we tried to put it into a shape that would be reasonable. There aren't any costs associated with it right now. There's no projects except the one that's being talked about right there, and that would fit. Unless you want to have a tavern, then we'll talk about it.
Sorry, ma'am, go ahead.
Barbara Costanzo. I just listened to a lot of business, I'm just a resident, but my heart goes out to all of you business people that it's your livelihood. And maybe there could be an email where, you know, the newsletter can go out to the business people that have rallied themselves to get here to make it easier and make them feel more welcomed and more a part of this whole procedure, because they are. And I know that the will of you people want it, so let's make it easy for them to get the information.
So to that, I will ask Sandy maybe to put a piece of paper out front here, and if you guys want to just give me your name and address, or email address, we'll build a distribution list. That'd actually be cheaper for the town if you want to spend 50 cents on it.
Absolutely.
So, I like the idea. Yes, sir.
I don't really have a question on Don or Bonneview Lane. I am pretty impressed with everything here tonight. I want to commend the business people for coming out, speaking their mind, letting these people know what you think. It's important. It matters to all of us. I'm not a business owner, but all the business people, all the commercial people in here matter. And I'm thrilled that you all came tonight, because this is what they need. This is what we all need. I want to thank the committee and the board for all their work, and I want to thank the business owners and the residents that came out. We need you. We want you all here, and we need your input. It's critical. This is just the beginning. This is how we get things started to make this town better. I'm really impressed. I don't get to a lot of the town board meetings. I don't think I've ever been to a zoning meeting. This is impressive to see all you people here, and I want to thank everybody for their input.
And that is critical, because I think we, the board, since I've been here for 3 years, have been begging for help. I mean, for a few reasons. A, that the more people would come in and volunteer to do work on committees and stuff, reduces the cost to the town. And it's a good community thing, it's a good input. So again, I just encourage. Please come, please share. This is just all great stuff, man. So, there was, no?
I'll ask. I just got a question about section 6X5 on page 2. Hamlet District prohibited uses. No, I'm sorry, 6X4 special uses. And then some of the same things are on 6XX as prohibited uses on the second to the last page. So on page 2 and the second to the last page. And maybe I'm just, like it says, retail establishments that have gasoline filling stations, and then over here it says gasoline filling
What are the
stations.
the 2 pages?
Page 2
Yeah.
and the second to the last page, it doesn't have a number.
Gateway overlay case.
Is it because one is in a gateway overlay and one is
Yes.
in a hamlet?
Oh, you don't have the gateway overlay.
Oh, here.
Oh, yeah, that's just under 2 uses now, right?
Special use,
Right.
something
Right.
and some.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and those are things which are permitted in the rest of the district. And it's a very small gateway that we're talking about right now. We just didn't want to lead off with those, that's all. In the same way that when we worked earlier with a different GRC to deal with adult uses, we were extremely concerned that the very first property on the left as you come in on Route 7 was under negotiations with someone who wanted to start a juice bar with adult uses, which would not have been maybe the best introduction to Princetown. Welcome to Princetown, live news. And we didn't think it would really improve property values anywhere, so we dealt with that one. And this is kind of the same thing, but on a smaller scale. We just thought it would be nice to have some other use there. But we're negotiable, and he's talking about a pretty nice town right over there, so I think that may happen.
I do have some feedback. Wasn't sure it was you or the other gentleman. It looks like you may have left. The ratio of parcels to commercials, so the total of 795 residentials, which makes up about 79% of the tax value, and 26 parcels commercial, which makes up about 4% of the tax value, and we have about 326 lots that are vacant. So, I'm not sure, was it you or not?
No,
Yeah. I'm putting together, folks, just so on your way out, this email list, just give me your name and your email, and I'll put you on distribution, and if Paul and Vic and the ZRC are ready to meet again, we'll invite you. 7 o'clock is typically our start time.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, the ZRC has been meeting on the second Thursday and fourth Tuesday. We're trying to adjust it to the planning board and the town board. So the town board is on the second Tuesday, we're on the second Thursday. And the planning board is on the fourth Thursday, so we're on the fourth Tuesday. And we've been meeting twice.
Yeah, we try to keep the website updated. I need to take 1 second for,
Hi, everybody. My name is Ben Moore. I cover the videos every month for the town. I draw a paycheck from your tax money. I just want to let you know, I normally don't even say anything, but there's so many people here. I want everybody to know that if you are on a computer, you can view these meetings every month if you can't make it, especially business owners. You can go, I think, either to the town hall, or if you go to YouTube and look up Town of Princetown, you'll find the videos. Princetown Town Halls, and they're all special meetings, any meetings that are covered that I cover are on there. So, since there's such a good turnout, felt it necessary to let you know.
thank you, sir. And it's also on public access.
Yeah, public access also.
We've struggled a little bit the last month, but hopefully we're back on track. Yes, sir.
Rob Beck, I'm a recent resident, only been here for a couple of years. When I moved in, obviously... Sure. When I moved in, obviously there was no shopping, and when I moved, I knew that coming in here, so I'm not really sure why all of a sudden this is such a major concern. I mean, obviously when you moved here, you knew that coming in, so why is this such a problem?
I don't think it's a problem. So
Well, but
it's a
you
desire. I mean,
but
it's
you
not
made it a priority.
I have a car, and I can so far still afford the gas and drive down to Hanford.
Okay.
But would I prefer to have a grocery store here? Sure I would.
But-
And I think most people who live in this area would prefer to have a decent.
Okay, you said you did the survey, but, okay, when was this survey actually done?
May of
2008.
Right.
Okay, that's now over 5 years ago. That's not really a relevant piece of data anymore.
It is when you see how long we've struggled to get as far as we got.
Okay, but it
We've
really...
gone through 3 committees.
Okay, but you've had turnover here. I'm sorry, this is like the most disjointed group of people I've ever seen. You can barely agree on anything in this room. I mean...
This actually is probably one of the most civil meetings that I've been to.
Okay, well, that's
This is really good.
I mean, that's an embarrassment.
This
I
is
mean...
not an embarrassment. So really not.
Do you have a question?
Well, my point is that you're using outdated data, and really, I mean, do people really want this?
Well, is the data outdated if you look at the deeds, the sales? There's not that much of a difference between the people who lived here in 2008.
Okay, well, what was the response rate?
Statistically significant, but I think.
Statistically,
and
what was statistically significant?
25%.
25%, which is called statistically significant. And I was at that meeting, we had about the same, I mean, we had more people probably, we had a few more, not a lot more, it was like this. Nan Stolzenberg ran the meeting, and the questions were about the visions that people had, what did they see the town being? And what I said was, and 95 or 99% of the people said they wanted to keep it a rural place, and I said, hooray, because that's what I wanted too. I didn't move to Schenectady or Albany. I moved to Princetown because I wanted to live in a rural place. Doesn't mean I don't want those things I keep harping on, okay? And a number of other people did too. And at that meeting, I would say at least 50 or 60% of the people listed on the tables that she asked us all to draw up on her big sheets of paper and crayon, listed some kind of a town center or hamlet. And they listed as part of their vision. And it's gone on from there. So it ended up, because of the comprehensive plan continued, the revision committee continued, we drew up a survey, we sent it out, we put that question out because a lot of people had already said they were interested, and we got back a response that said, yeah, we are. So it ended up in the comprehensive plan, which only got passed 2 years ago after 8 years of work. Okay, and then because of the moratorium, we were told, the new committee that I'm heading, was told, okay, get on this Hamlet thing first. We've got a lot of things in the comprehensive plan we have to deal with. Things that the town agrees needs to happen, the protection of water. There are a lot of other issues. But this was put up on the front burner, and it took us, I'm sorry, 14 months to do it. That's the process.
At no cost to the town.
And this has been the most harmonious and intellectually stable and non-insulting meeting I've been to. So maybe it means that the more people we get here, the less of that personality stuff that we seem to get from meeting to meeting here.
All right, 1 second. So just to the comprehensive plan we passed in 2 years ago, the statistical data in there is current, other than 2 years ago. Mr. White.
Yes, I think you have a major misunderstanding of what you see here today. Because we all appreciate our town board here, and all of us as businesses appreciate them and all the work they do, and all the work that these two did. But what we realize as businesses, they missed us. And they missed things like he was pointing out about making residential and commercial together and noise pollution and things like that, the things that maybe they didn't think of. And so we're all here to be part of this, not to separate from them or argue with them or cause a problem for them. We're just asking them, here's some of our concerns, please let us be part of what you're doing. And that's why we all got together, and that's why we as businesses made the phone calls, and you see us here today. It's because we want to be part of the town. Nobody's getting mad at or blaming these guys for anything. We really appreciate all the time and effort they put into it. We just weren't heard, and so tonight some of us stood up and we were heard. And I would like to thank all of you for what you do for the town here. Thank you.
More feedback. Thoughts, suggestions?
Yeah, that's one of those, and on that bombshell.
Again, I'm going to run out in front of everybody here, put this out on the table. Please, Mr. White, gentlemen, please sign up. I'll send it out hopefully in 2 weeks, maybe less. We'll get the ZRC committee to come in, And again, brainstorming, tossing ideas around is great. If we can meet, 80% agreement, we should be good to go. With that, is there any other questions?
I got one question.
Yes, sir.
Like the paper I gave Sally over there, all the residents was given it, but all the businesses was not.
I will check the addresses.
Not all the residents were.
There's a reason for that. You have to look at it that way, I think.
Right.
But it shouldn't be, everybody should get it.
Right.
Am I right? Am I correct?
You're correct.
I'm not the same. We're neighbors. He's the business owner. He don't get it. I do, right next door to him, on the same property. It just looks bad. It looks like it was intentionally not sent to all the business owners in town.
Like I say, I got some returns with, return stamps from the post office, so I got a bunch of them too. So again, I'll look, the addresses we pulled are from,
Mr. Joyce, did you send me one of those newsletters?
I don't know.
I didn't get one.
I didn't get one.
I didn't get. There were select people that received that, privately paid for newsletter.
Thank you.
Judy Drizzland, I live on Rhinex Corners, so a lot of the
Hey,
Hamlet
guys,
stuff,
if we,
a lot of the Hamlet things don't really impact me, but I was here a couple of weeks ago to hear about the Hamlet because I received a privately paid for, privately distributed newsletter. It is not an official town newsletter. And I'm wondering, why haven't we received an official town newsletter with all of this information about the meetings, about the fact that this was going to be happening tonight? Because I'll bet you if an official town newsletter went out, you would see twice as many people here. We have not been notified under the official town letterhead. Everything we got before was privately done and privately distributed. And the reason people turned out a couple of weeks ago was because of the tenor of the writing in that newsletter. The only article in that newsletter that was strictly factual was written by this gentleman over here. Everything else in there was purely emotional content designed to get people to come out because that privately written newsletter was actually being critical of the rest of the town board. And I question the ethics of that being sent with town board members' names on it. And I would request to be taken off of that list.
Okay. Yes, sir.
A great thing, let's get the emails signed up here. But can't we just email the town and say, send me your information? Instead of just everybody standing in line out here, I mean,
Yeah.
I can email you guys tomorrow morning, maybe.
My email address is mjoyce@princetown.net. It's on the website. You can do that and I can add you. Or in Sandy, it's sfortune@princetown.net. You can do that either way. Hit it, Paul?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's been a marvelous meeting, and I personally really appreciate your comments, and I appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.